When I first started drawing, I was wrong about anatomy. And if I could go back in time and learn anatomy again, I would use a system that I stumbled upon that simplified anatomy for me and sped up my learning process. You see, I wanted to learn to draw because I was inspired by anime. But I was especially inspired by artists like Loish, Likelihood Art, Sam does art.
Oh, yeah.
But every time I would look at my art, it felt stiff, rigid, boring. What was I doing wrong? How could I improve? Where should I even start? Well, the system I'm about to share with you, I guarantee you that you use it every day, and you probably don't even notice it. So there are 26 letters that can create 170,000 modern-day words in the English language. But for us to understand those 170,000 modern-day words, we must first understand how to read the English alphabet. Now, I want you to look at the sentence and tell me what you read. Okay, now I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you read in terms of drawing anatomy. If you're just starting out the way I did and trying to learn to draw, you probably have the same problem I had when I first started drawing, which is I look at a reference where I looked at other artists' artwork and all I saw was complexity. Eyes, nose, mouth, chest, arms, legs, pelvis, all the lumps and bumps, and all of it felt overwhelming. Of course, I wanted to give up. Who wouldn't? But just like understanding how to read, we have to practice. So I kept learning and days passed, and those days turned to weeks, and those weeks turned into months. And something interesting happened while I was trying to learn to draw. I began to see a pattern. No, not a pattern in the human body, because each human body is very diverse and very unique, but in how I began to read the human body. And this was my first breakthrough. When I look at figures now, I don't see the human body. I see shapes. Circles, squares, triangles, ovals, different groupings, unique overlaps. So this is the first step I would focus on if I were to learn anatomy again, which is being able to break down complex forms into simple shapes. In the same way, we break down words into simple letters. So how do we do that? Well, I have a whole video showcasing how I see simple shapes in complex forms, which I'll link at the end of this video, so stay until the end. But this leads me to my next point. So in the first step, we had to learn to read. In this next step, we need to learn to write. So with learning to write, we must first understand that there are 5 vowels and 21 consonants that fit together. And depending how we put these vowels and consonants together, we create meaning. So just like we understand how letters make words, we must now understand how shapes, when we put them together, create meaning, movement, and emotion. One of the hardest things I discovered was once I practiced drawing shapes, I didn't know how to place them in a way that made it feel like a living and breathing person. My figures felt stiff. I would look at other artists' work and think, how does Loish draw her figures? How does Likelihood Art draw her figures? How does Sam does art draw his figures?
Oh, yeah.
And if I could go back, this is the second part I would focus on tremendously when it comes to anatomy. Gesture. Now, gesture drawing is simple to explain, but hard to put into practice. So one of the questions I had when I first started learning gesture was, what is gesture drawing? How much do you need to include in gesture? Or what is the right length of time for you to do gesture drawing? So how did I learn gesture drawing? Okay, here's the truth. Here's the honest truth. Understanding shapes and shape language is something you have to learn by increasing your observational skills, which is the same way we learn to read, by sounding out the letters and being able to identify the letters. But gesture drawing is something you have to practice, the same way you have to practice writing. But let me give you a quick look at gesture from my perspective. Now, gesture drawing is a mix of shape language and muscles. This is why it can be kind of complicated. What I mean by that is hopefully you've been practicing putting your shapes into human forms. And so now we use gesture as a happy medium between shapes and muscles. So with step 1, we focused on shapes. With this step, no longer are we focusing on showcasing the shapes. Now we're focusing on using aspects of those shapes to express how the figure is moving, which now leads me to my next step. In this step, I actually wish I studied less when I first started drawing. And yes, I did mean to say I wish I studied this less when I first started. Let me explain. So when I first started, my figures fell off. And I assumed what I needed to do was to dedicate studies to muscle groups. And so I would study arms, and I would study legs, and I would do study of heads.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking that the trick to unlock my art were these individual muscle studies. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do these studies. You should. However, what I am saying is doing these studies will help you understand the forms better, but I don't believe they will make your drawings improve. Now, I know I'm about to trigger some artists in the comments, and I'm more than happy to debate this. But studying individual muscle groups only made my figures more stiff. And what I didn't realize at the time that I now realize is muscles operate as a unit. So here's my tip that I wish I had known when I first started drawing. Instead of studying individual muscles, start studying how these muscles interact as a part of a whole. Start trying to find references of people in action and how each muscle is affected by the muscle that it's surrounded by. So less focus on individual biceps and forearms, and more focus on arms and how those arms connect to the torso, and how the torso affects the legs. I'll see you in the next video.